Let's listen to an enthralling story by Oscar Wilde. The Nightingale and the Rose. A young student was madly in love with a girl. His hair was dark as the hyacinth blossom, and his lips were red as the rose of his desire. But the passion had made his face pale ivory, and sorrow had set her seal upon his brow. The girl of his desire told him that she would dance with him if he brought red roses for her. However, there was no rose in young student's garden. From the nest in the home oak tree, a nightingale heard him, and she looked out through the leaves and wondered. She thought whether happiness depended on those little things. Nightingale thought that she has read all that the wise men have written and all the secrets of philosophy. Here at last is a true lover, said the nightingale. Night after night the nightingale sung of young student. Though the nightingale did not know him, and night after night nightingale told their story to the stars. The prince gives a ball tomorrow night, murmured the young student, and my love will be of the company. If I bring her a red rose, she'll dance with me till dawn. If I bring her a red rose, I shall hold her in my arms, and she will lean her head upon my shoulder, and her hand will be clasped in mine. However, there was no red rose in garden, therefore I shall sit lonely, and she will leave behind me. She will ignore me, and my heart will break. Here definitely is the true lover, said the nightingale. What I sing of, he suffers, and what is pleasure to me, to him is pain. Definitely, love is an incredible thing. Love is more precious than emeralds, and dearer than fine opals. Pearls and pomegranates cannot buy it, nor is it set into the open in the marketplace. Love can't be weighed out in the balance for gold, nor be purchased of the merchants, nor can it be weighed out in the balance for gold. Musicians will play upon their stringed instruments in their gallery, said the young student, and my love will dance to the sound of the harp and the violin. She'll dance so flippantly that her feet will not touch the floor, and the courtiers in their gay dresses will crowd round her. But with me she will not dance, for I have no red rose to give her. And he flung himself down on the grass, covered his face in his hands, and wept. Why is he weeping? Asked a little grey lizard. Why indeed? Asked a butterfly, who was fluttering about after a sunbeam. Why indeed? Whispered a daisy to his neighbour in a soft, low voice. He is weeping for a red rose, said the nightingale. For a red rose? They cried. How very ridiculous, said the little lizard, who was something of a cynic, and she laughed outright. However, the nightingale understood the secret of the student's sorrow, and she sat soundless in the oak tree and thought of regarding the secrecy of love. All of a sudden she soared into the air. She passed through the orchard like a shadow, and like a shadow she sailed across the garden. In the middle of the grass plot there a beautiful rose tree, and when she saw it, she flew over it and lit upon a spray. She cried and said, Give me a red rose, and I will sing you my sweetest song. But the tree shook its head. The tree answered, My roses are white as the bubbles of the sea, and whiter than the snowfall upon the mountain. But go to my brother, who grows round the old sundial, and perhaps he will give you what you want, the tree added. Therefore, the nightingale flew over to the rose tree that was growing round the old sundial. "Give me a red rose," she cried, "and I'll sing you my sweetest song." But the tree shook its head. "My roses are yellow," it answered, "as yellow as the hair of the mermaiden who sits upon an amber throne, and yellower than the daffodil that blooms in the meadow before the mower comes with his scythe. But go to my brother, who grows beneath the student's window, and perhaps he will give you what you want." So the nightingale flew over to the rose tree that was growing beneath the student's window. "Give me a red rose," she cried, "and I'll sing you my sweetest song." But the tree shook its head. "My roses are red," it answered, "as red as the feet of the dove, and redder than the great fans of coral that wave and wave in the ocean cavern. The winter has chilled my veins, the frost has nipped my buds, the storm has broken my branches, and I shall have no roses at all this year." The nightingale cried and added, "One red rose is all I want." "Only one red rose? Is there no way by which I can get it?" it cried out again. "There is a way," answered the tree, "but it's so terrible that I dare not tell it to you." "Tell it to me," said the nightingale. "I'm not afraid." "If you want a red rose," said the tree, "you must build it out of music by moonlight and stain it with your own heart's blood. You must sing to me with your breast against a thorn. All night long you must sing to me, and the thorn must pierce your heart, and your lifeblood must flow into my veins and become mine," said the tree again. "Death is a huge penalty to pay for a red rose," cried the nightingale, "and life is very beloved to all. It is pleasing to sit in the green wood and to watch the sun in his chariot of gold and the moon in her chariot of gem. Sweet is the scent of the hawthorn, and sweet are the bluebells that hide in the valley, and the heather that blows on the hill." The nightingale coming on. "However, love is superior than life. And what is the heart of a bird compared to the heart of a man?" she went on. So she extended her brown wings for journey and soared into the air. She swept over the garden like a shadow, and like a shadow she sailed through the grove. The student was still lying on the grass where she had left him, and the tears had not yet dried up in his beautiful eyes. "Be happy," cried the nightingale. "Be happy. You shall have your red rose. I'll build it out of music by moonlight and tarnish it with my own heart's blood. All that I ask of you in return is that you will be a true lover, for love is wiser than philosophy. Though she is wise and mightier than power, though he is mighty," said the nightingale. "Flame-colored were his wings, and colored like flame was the body. The student's lips were sweet as honey, and his breath was like frankincense." The student looked up from the grass and listened, but he could not know what the nightingale was saying to him, for he only knew the things that were written down in books. However, the oak tree understood and felt sad, because he was very fond of the little nightingale who had built a nest in his branches. The oak tree whispered to the nightingale, "Sing me one last song." "I shall feel very lonely when you are gone," it carried on. Therefore, the nightingale sang to the oak tree, and her voice was like water sparkling from a silver jar. When she had finished her song, the student got up and pulled a notebook and a lead pencil out of his pocket. "She has form," he said to himself as he walked away through the grove, "that cannot be denied to her. But has she got feeling? I'm afraid not. In fact, she is like most artists, and she is all style without any sincerity. She would not sacrifice herself for others," he concluded. "She thinks simply of music, and everybody knows that the arts are selfish. Still, it must be admitted that she has some beautiful notes in her voice. What a pity it is that they do not mean anything, nor do any practical good," he said to himself. In addition, he went into his room and rested down on his little pallet bed and began to imagine of his love, and after a time he fell asleep. Moreover, when the moon shone in the heavens, the nightingale flew to the rose tree and set her breast against the thorn. All night long she sang with her breast against the thorn, and the cold crystal moon leaned down and listened. All night long she sang, and the spike went deeper and deeper into her breast, and her lifeblood ebbed away from her. First she sang of the birth of love in the feeling of a boy and a girl. Moreover, on the topmost car of the rose tree, there blossomed an amazing rose, petal following petal, as another song was followed by song. Pale was it at first, as the mist that hangs over the river, pale as the feet of the morning, and silver as the wings of the dawn. As the shadow of a rose in a mirror of silver, and as the shadow of a rose in a water pool, and so was the rose that blossomed on the topmost spray of the tree. However, the tree cried to the nightingale to push closer against the thorn. "Push closer, little nightingale," cried the tree, "or the day will come before the rose is finished." Therefore, the nightingale pressed closer against the thorn, and louder grew her song, for she sang with the birth of passion in the soul of a man and a maid. In addition, a delicate color of pink came into the leaves of the rose, like the color in the face of the bridegroom when he kissed the lips of the bride. However, the thorn had not yet reached her heart, so the rose's heart remained white, for only a nightingale's heart's blood can crimson the heart of a rose. And the rose cried to the nightingale to push closer against the thorn. "Press closer, little nightingale," cried the tree, "or the day will come before the rose is finished." So the nightingale pressed closer against the thorn, and the thorn touched her heart, and a fierce pang of pain shot through her. Harsh was pain, and wilder grew her song, for she sang of the adore that is perfected by death, about the adore that died not in the tomb. In addition, the wonderful rose became crimson, like the rose of the eastern sky. Crimson was the girdle of petals, and crimson as ruby was the heart. But the nightingale's tone grew fainter, and her little wings began to strike, and a film came over her eyes. Fainter and fainter grew her song, and she felt something sharp in her throat. Then she gave one last explode of harmony. The white moon heard it, and she forgot the daylight and lingered on in the sky. Red Rose heard it, and it trembled all over with ecstasy and opened its petals to the cold morning air. Echo bore it to her purple cavern in the hills and woke the sleeping shepherds from their dreams. It floated through the reeds of the river and they carried its message to the sea. "Look, look!" cried the tree. "The rose is finished now." But the nightingale made no answer, for she was lying dead in the long grass, with thorn in her heart. And at noon, the student opened his window and looked out. "Why, what a wonderful piece of luck!" he cried. "Here is a red rose. I've never seen any rose like it in all my life. It's so beautiful that I'm sure it has a long Latin name." And he leaned down and plucked it. Then he put on his hat and ran up to the professor's house with the rose in his hand. The professor's daughter was sitting in the entranceway, winding blue silk on a reel, and her little dog was lying at her feet. "You said you would dance with me if I brought you a red rose?" cried the student. "Here is the reddest rose in all the world. You'll dress in it tonight next to your heart, and as we dance together, it will tell you how I love you." The girl glowered. "I'm scared it will not go with my costume," she answered. "And as well, the Chamberlain's nephew has sent me some real jewels, and everybody knows that jewels cost far more than flowers." "Well, upon my word, you're very ungrateful," said the student angrily. And he threw the rose into the street, where it fell into the gutter, and a cartwheel went over it. "Ungrateful?" said the girl. "I tell you what, you're very rude, and after all, who are you?" "Only a student," she angrily said to him. "Why, I don't accept as true you have even got silver buckles to your shoes, as the Chamberlain's nephew has." She got up from her chair and went into the house. "What a stupid thing love is," said the student as he walked away. "It is not half as practical as logic, for it does not demonstrate anything, and it is constantly telling one about things that are not going to turn out and makes one believe things that are not factual. In fact, it is fairly unpractical, and as in this age, to be practical is everything. I shall go back to philosophy and study metaphysics," he concluded. So he returned to his room and pulled out a great dusty book and began to read it.